Hi there, I'm Paula Jenkins, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this second part of a three-part series where I'm talking to William J. Peters all about his brand new book, which is At Heaven's Door, we're going to be discussing what is a shared death experience. Oh my goodness, you may have heard of the term near-death experience, and it's very similar to that, but I'm excited to have him back today and have him talk a little bit more about the nuances of shared death experience. And so let's just head on over to that conversation. What is a shared death experience? If you'd explain how you see it and understand it, I think that'd be really helpful for the audience.
So the way the shared death experience is defined is a loved one or caregiver or even a bystander is either at the bedside or remote at the time of someone who is dying, and they report that they shared in the crossing into a benevolent afterlife. So they may see the person. Well, I can go into the main characteristics to really help clarify this. The most important thing about a shared death experience is that we're getting a glimpse as loved ones, caregivers, or bystanders. We're getting a glimpse into this journey. That's the dominant motif, the journey from this human life to what lies beyond. So, and the themes in terms of characteristics or qualities is highly energetic. Like there's something about it that pulls you into a different state or sensational, I should say, experience of sensations within yourself. The other piece of this would be that there's good sublime feelings. So feelings of love or euphoria, joy would work too. If you look at the primary characteristic of the shared death experience from our research, 51% of our interviewed experiencers report seeing the dying in some form. 16% report seeing an elevated being of some type that's there essentially to greet the dying, the transitioning individual. 13% will report seeing other deceased relatives or friends. 25% will report seeing a brilliant light. Now, when we bring up light, your viewers may be thinking, oh, this sounds a lot like the NDE, the near-death experience. And indeed it is. Those of us who study this, Raymond Moody in particular, we've had many conversations about these experiences. And we agree that the near-death experience and the shared death experience are similar, if not identical, in terms of possible phenomena that one can experience. It makes sense. It's a similar landscape.
And if there is something we're all transitioning to, and it would make sense that it is also has similar properties, even if we can't quite comprehend what it is from here in this plane.
It's a similar terrain, and we all pass through it.
The only experience that I have anywhere near this is that after my grandmother passed away when I was 10, and it might have even been on this day that we're recording this at that age. A day later, my sister, myself, and my cousin, we were not in the same rooms. We were not anywhere near each other. We each independently reported to our moms that grandma came to say goodbye. Now, is that something that's similar? Is that that's not really a shared death experience so much as, or is it? Is that a visitation of sorts?
That's a beautiful question. I get excited by that question because that is what we call a remote shared death experience. So you're not at the bedside, obviously,
No, we were not.
and you're just doing your life, maybe sleeping.
Doing math homework in my case.
Oh, great. So this is wonderful. So she came and got your attention to say what we kind of look at the remote to say, thank you, I love you, goodbye.
Yep. Yep. That's exactly what it was. And so incredible that each of us independently, and we were all, I was the oldest, the other two were like probably 7 and 3, like that each of us had this very overwhelming experience that was grandma. She came, we knew she was fine. There was nothing upsetting. It was very much a closure and a love. Thank you. That's actually very comforting to me.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because one of the big breakthroughs of our research in this is that two-thirds, about 64% of all of our interviewees will report a remote shared death experience, not a bedside. So about roughly one-third is a bedside and two-thirds are remote. Now, this changes everything, because you asked a question about, well, was this a vision or a visitation? Well, no, a post-death dream or a post-death vision or visitation, which we also track in our research, is very different, because they're coming in that type of visitation, the person, the deceased that appears, usually appears very stable, they're just there, and they're coming to you, and they're coming with a specific message, and then when it's delivered, they disappear. Now, in a remote or even bedside, but in a remote SDE, what you'll notice is that you get a sense that they're coming to visit you to tell you, thank you, I love you, goodbye. And then you actually will get a sense that they're departing. You will actually feel the journey in them. You'll actually, we'll go a little bit deep. I love this topic.
Yeah, this is a good one. I like it too. Thank you.
Yeah. So the metaphor or the example that I use that made sense for me, because I struggle with how to explain this. I've had numerous of these. It seems like all my relatives will fly by as they're leaving, which is great. I appreciate it. But the way I define it or describe it is, do you remember seeing the wonderful Wizard of Oz? There's that little fairy that comes in, and it's actually in all the Disney features, I think. That beautiful little fairy comes in, and then with her wand, she goes a little, blessing, as if something like that, and then she leaves. But that's kind of what a shared death experience remote is. It's like this: your deceased loved one comes in, drops right in on you, stops for a second, gives you a sacred communication, and touches you deeply, and then you just feel them go quickly. And then they're off to wherever they're going. And in your case, which I'd love to hear, because multi-person shared death experiences happen about, I think it's 11% of the time, but it's around there. So it's not that common, but you don't need to be in the same place, which you weren't with it sounds like your cousins and siblings. I just love that you've had the experience, because you get how profound it is and how it doesn't leave. And yet, I'm going to say something else. I doubt you were encouraged to talk too much about it. It's not something you don't go to show and tell and say anything. Anybody have something they want to share? That's not going to go over very well. And those aren't, but we're hoping to change that. But here's one other thing, Paula, to mention here is you asked another great question about, well, does it have to happen at the time of death exactly? Well, our research suggests that about 9% happen a few hours or up to a day. Even some cases, we have one case, it was like 3 weeks in advance, but that person was declining quite a bit. But we also have 14% that will happen after the death, hours, days, typically not too much longer than that. So it's the pattern that we look for. We look for a pattern, and I identified this pattern, about 8 years ago. And now I just feel like when I hear the pattern, it's like, yeah, this is not.
It always falls right in.
And then when you see it. So thank you for sharing that. I love that you've had it.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed this discussion with William J. Peters. I just love this topic so much. And so if you are as big a fan of these kinds of conversations, I hope that you'll listen to parts 1 and 3 of this series, where last time we talked more about his book. And in the upcoming discussion, we're going to talk about why people aren't talking about shared death experiences and death and dying more in our society. So stay tuned for that. If you like this kind of content and you want to hear more about people talking about what lights them up and what brings them joy, and yes, I think grief and joy have things in common, be sure and hit that subscribe button for this channel. I'm growing it now, and I'm going to keep putting out great content. Next week, you're going to get to hear from me again about liminal space. And so I'd love to have you along for the journey. So hit the subscribe button, hit that notify button, so you'll get notified when new content is available. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you in the next video.